So you've been putting in the work, you've been meditating, you've been journaling, you've been healing, you've been raising your vibration, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I'm back in victim mindset. Sometimes it comes in so quietly that we hardly see it come. And then other times it's like, bam, a cannonball. And we're like, how can we be back here? How can we be here again, even if we have been doing so much personal growth, so much healing? This actually happened to me last week, and I learned a lot. And so I wanted to share the insights I learned through this experience because I think they could be helpful. And I have 4 tips for you to get out of victim mindset. The second one is a bit controversial, but I actually think it's the most powerful one. So if you're hearing that little voice, poor me, come back, or if you're just wanting to make sure you don't slip back into the victim mindset, let's dive in. So if you're watching this video, I'm sure you actually already know what the victim mindset is. It's basically when we blame anything outside of ourselves for our situation or our circumstances. And it can show up blaming huge things like the system, the economy, the world, the climate. But it can also be much more subtle things, much more personal things, like blaming our parents or blaming our bodies or blaming things that have happened to us either a couple of years ago or even in the past or even just yesterday. But the problem is when you're in a victim mindset, it's like you don't have any responsibility. You're blaming everybody else. And so, yes, it's kind of good because you're not at fault. But on the other hand, you have no agency. And in a way, it's almost as if you can't do anything to change your situation. And it's really disempowering. On the other hand, the more empowering way to be is the one in which you don't see life happening to you, but you see it happening for you. So in the end, the circumstances don't change. Things might still happen to you, but you feel them and you perceive them differently. Like, for example, if you lose your job, the poor me mindset is going to be like, oh, well, this always happens to me. It wasn't my fault. My boss doesn't like me, or this the economy, or there's no way I can actually change my situation. Whereas the person with the more empowered mindset is going to be like, okay, well, I lost my job. Maybe I'm going to go ask my boss for feedback, or maybe I'm actually going to use this as an opportunity to finally be able to do what I've always wanted to do, but never wanted to or never thought I could because I had my other job. So yeah, we have these 2 different ways of being, the victim mindset or the more empowered mindset. But how do you do it to stay out of the victim mindset? And what to do when you slip back in? Well, my first tip is to notice this new victim mindset. Because the tricky thing is when we actually evolve and grow and we're healing and we're kind of like going through higher vibrations, well, our victim mindset also changes and evolves. It's kind of like our ego. We have an ego and we do the work and then we have an ego death, but then there's a new ego that comes and sometimes we can't even notice it at the beginning. So the first step is to notice it, because noticing your new victim mindset might be actually kind of hard at the beginning. Because at the beginning, when we're learning about the victim mindset, it's more easy. We're blaming like some big thing, like either our parents or the economy or something like this. But as we evolve, it becomes much more subtle. So, for example, this more subtle victim mindset might sound more like, well, why am I not progressing as fast as this other person? Or I should be more spiritual by now. Or why am I not able to connect with my guides? Why can they do that and why can't I? And maybe something's wrong with me, or maybe I'm just not able to do this. And the most common one these days that we hear about is like, well, why am I not able to manifest? Or this person's able to manifest, but maybe I'm not. Or maybe I'm just not good enough to manifest, or something's wrong with me, or I can't change my mind. Me, for example, last week I was meditating and I have some pains in my body, and I've been following this Joe Dispenza meditation, and that comes from the book You Are the Placebo, because he mentions that you can actually change a lot of things. He is some of the people who have been doing these meditations are able to cure cancer. So I was like, well, I should be able to cure my pain. And it has been working. There are some moments where I'm feeling a lot less pain. Is it due to the meditation? It doesn't really matter. But then recently, last week, some of my pains were coming back and it was just frustrating. And I was kind of going through this kind of pattern of like, oh, well, I can't do this. This works for other people, but it doesn't work for me. But the thing is, I have to remember I've only been really doing this for like 21 days and I need to give it some time. But still, my mindset, my knee-jerk reaction was to go into that kind of old pattern that is something that I sometimes do, which is like, well, it works for other people, but it doesn't work for me, or somehow I must be doing something wrong, or maybe my mind doesn't work the same way as everybody else's. Anyway, that is all victim mindset. It's just that it has like a new costume. something that seems more spiritual or more personal growth oriented, it looks almost like I'm trying to progress, because in a way I'm like, oh, well, it's just because I'm wanting to progress that I'm thinking that. But those are not very positive or empowering thoughts, because basically it doesn't give me anything that I can really do anything about. So again, the first tip is to notice it. And then that brings me to the second tip, which is the controversial tip, which is to allow yourself to wallow in it, but for 24 hours max. And I know a lot of people will tell you not to do that, that you need to reframe your thoughts and don't let yourself like get caught in anything negative. But at the same time, I find that actually by letting yourself wallow in it for 24 hours max, you set yourself a timer once you've noticed it, because again, sometimes it takes us a little bit of time to notice. But once you've noticed your victim mindset, set yourself a timer and give yourself 24 hours to just be thinking about it without trying to reframe it, without trying to find a positive spin on it yet. We'll get to that later. But the first step is to allow yourself to just be like, oh, okay, I'm in victim mindset. Why? Because when we try to reframe things or try to like set a positive spin on them right away, we're actually kind of brushing something under the rug. So give yourself one day to feel it fully. And then you can be very curious about it. What is it telling you? What is the story that's going on and on? Is it that you're just not good enough, or something's wrong with you? Or try to basically, when the victim mindset comes up, it's like showing us something. And so when we reframe it right away, we're not looking at what it's actually trying to show us. It's trying to tell us something. And so it's time for us to listen. Carl Jung actually says that until you bring the unconscious into the conscious, it will run your life and you will think it's fate, which is exactly the definition of victim mindset. In the sense that if you kind of like brush things under and don't ever look at your shadow, they're going to run your life and it's going to feel as if it's something else. But it coming up is in itself a teacher. So if you can be honest with your poor little voice story, meet it with curiosity, ask it what it's trying to teach you. And a great way to do this is with Tara Brach's RAIN method, which is an acronym. RAIN, R-A-I-N. R, recognize. A, allow. I, investigate. And N, nurture. So you recognize, that was the first tip. You recognize that you're in victim mindset. 2, you allow it. You don't brush it under the rug. You don't try to reframe it. You don't try to see a positive twist on it. And 3, you investigate. Why? What is it coming up for you? What is it trying to tell you? Well, in my case, for example, with my pain or my meditation, I think it was trying to teach me maybe some patience, maybe trying to remember that like, it might take some time, and that I need to remember that like, I can't like, heal like 43 years of pain in 21 days. And that like, yes, I'm working and I'm doing some progress, but just to be patient. I think that little voice was also wanting me to nurture the little girl who wants to be successful, who wants things to be able to work, who feels left behind sometimes, left behind by other people who are able to manifest all these things. And same goes with, let's say like, for example, your victim mindset is about the abundance or the not able to manifest these days. Well, what is the pain that it's actually showing you? What is it showing the light on? Which shadow is it shining light on? Because the thing is, our victim mindset in itself is in a way a shadow that's being brought up to light. Yes, it's also like showing a light, but the victim mindset in itself is also a shadow. And so it's like, instead of like pushing it away or being embarrassed, it's also just about being really acceptant about the fact that like, it's part of the process. And then for the final letter, the N in RAIN is nurture. And that is to be compassionate with ourselves, to be compassionate with our shadow self, whatever we're dealing with, and to be very like comforting to that little wounded child maybe. For example, in the case of like manifesting abundance, maybe there was something about that happened in your childhood or recently or something. And it's about being compassionate to that. But I also think it's about being compassionate to ourselves right now while we're going through a victim mindset, and not start blaming ourselves or kind of judging ourselves for falling backwards. It's about just accepting that is where we are. And it's only now, after you've been compassionate, after you've addressed your shadow, after you've looked at it, after you've seen what it is exactly that's being triggered here, that you can move on to tip 3. And that is to ask yourself what you can learn here. What is the lesson here? And to reframe it in a positive way. Because now it's time to reframe it. Now it is time to see the positive in this, because there is a teaching to be able to learn there. And it is linked to your number 2. It is linked to that shadow. And that's why it's so important not to brush it under the rug. Because what you're going to learn through this experience is actually whatever the shadow got triggered in number 2. That shadow that you keep wanting to brush under the rug, the one that you just are embarrassed about and wish you wouldn't have that victim mindset. Well, that's the exact thing that you can learn from. And so now in tip 3, it's the moment. It's the time to actually look at it and ask yourself, well, what am I supposed to learn here? What am I supposed to be able to learn so I can move on and progress and keep evolving? And I love in the meditation that I'm actually following from Joe Dispenza, at the end of it, he says, may your challenges initiate you to greatness. And I just love that phrase, because I think that's exactly what this is. And it really kind of embodies even the victim mindset, because it's like, if you can look at whatever you're going through and see it more as a challenge, more as a lesson that's actually going to even get you to a better place, then it stops feeling like a challenge and it feels more almost like a game. It feels almost like more like a something like, oh, okay, what can I do? What can I do to learn this? And I love this quote I saw on the internet. I don't know who it's from, but it said something like, well, I had to make it uncomfortable for you because otherwise you wouldn't have moved. Signed, the universe. And I just thought that was really funny, because in a way, it's exactly this. It's like we kind of sometimes have these uncomfortable things happen to us so that we can actually then move through them and then get to a higher level. And yes, it means that you might come down, but again, once you're in that higher level, you'll be able to deal with the problem in a totally different way. I also think it's really important to remember that actually by revisiting our pain, sometimes we think that we're going backwards. But the fact that it's coming back up is maybe a sign that we're progressing, that we're actually getting to higher vibrations. Because when we get to higher vibrations, we can actually see those shadow parts, the parts of ourselves that we keep maybe coming up, but that in the end, now that we're here at this new place, this new way of learning through our healing, through our journey, through our higher vibrations, we're actually able to tackle it from a different light, from a different place. And we're actually being able to kind of play with it and see it. It's like an onion. It's like you peel off a layer and then, you might get out of victim mindset, and maybe something later is going to come and trigger it again, and you're going to refeel in that victim mindset, but from a new place, from a new learning, from a higher place, so that you're actually going to be able to tackle it even deeper. And eventually you'll get to the end of the onion. But first of all, you just have to remember that each time it comes back, it's actually an opportunity. It's actually an opportunity to be learning that lesson, or that specific lesson, or that specific new, it's like point 1.2. Well, you're learning the 0.2. Maybe you're going to have to learn the 3 and the 4 and the 5, and maybe you're going to have to go all the way to 9 until you can finally get to a 2 and just, shove that chapter away. But in the meantime, you keep looking at different angles of it. And as soon as you start seeing that, even as soon as you start seeing that the fact that the victim mindset is back, and that you can maybe even embrace that instead of feeling bad about it, start thinking, oh, I'm lucky. It's come back. It's like, maybe it's even a sign that I'm growing. It might help you just get out of that victim mindset again and start focusing on how you can grow and heal from it. And for the last tip, the 4th tip, is going to be a tarot tip. Because if you're new here, I use tarot, but not at all to predict the future. I use tarot as the powerful tool that it is, which is a tool of self-reflection and basically being able to have conversations with ourselves, diving deep inside. Basically, it's like having a mirror. So let's see what it has to say. Ooh, Temperance. Okay, this one actually really makes me laugh, because Temperance is about moderation, balance, but also patience. And goodness, who wants patience, right? That is never what we want to hear in anything. But actually, especially here in this case, I think it's perfect. Because when we're learning and when we keep evolving and we keep moving up and we keep getting out of victim mindset and we're empowered and then we fall back, well, we have to remember to be patient. We have to remember that we're learning. It's like a kid when they learn to walk. They walk and they fall, and then they walk and they fall again. And then they start running, and then they run and they fall, and they run and they fall. And then they start maybe having a bike, and then they ride the bike and they fall, and they ride the bike and they fall. But they keep falling, sure, but they're still progressing, and they're going from walking to running to biking to who knows, maybe a rocket ship, who knows. But all that to say is that I think this is a perfect reminder that actually we need to remember that we're apprentices here. And even if we're doing the spiritual work, even if we're growing, we will sometimes have moments that bring us backwards. But actually, as I mentioned before, maybe if we can reframe that and not even see it as if like we're going backwards, maybe it's actually going forwards. It's just we can't see it yet. But maybe going backwards and going back into victim mindset is making us work on that shadow in a new way, and is actually bringing us to that next level. But I think there's a second message here. And that message is because this card is also about taking two things that are kind of opposites. Like in this card, you see the water and the fire both together, and kind of doing something, alchemizing them so that they work together, so that you can find the balance and the harmony, despite them being opposite elements. And to me, I feel like that is exactly the work we're doing here, because we're working both with the light and the shadow, and both of them work together. Both are important, and it can be like they're kind of opposites that repel, but you can also make them work together. The light shines a light on the shadow, which makes you work, which makes your light go up, and it's like this careful balance and this careful, wonderful dance. And if we can see it that way, and we can see the fact that the more we progress, the more we're going to have to deal with our shadows, the ones the really deep ones. But that actually can be a beautiful thing, because it will eventually get us to a higher state. So to me, those are the two big messages of this beautiful card, which is patience while we learn, and also remembering to use both together. That it's, the light and the shadow are both important. We can't have the light if we don't have the shadow, and vice versa. So I hope through this video that the next time you find yourself in victim mindset, or if you're in victim mindset right now, you can kind of see it in a different light, which is not to feel guilty or to judge yourself for being back in those places. Yes, you're aiming to get out, and that's a great thing. But while you're there, use it to your advantage. See what you have to learn there, because it might be addressing your shadow front on, including the fact that you're in victim mindset, which might actually really be the key to helping you get out. And then just to remember that it's that balance. It's that balance of both, growing out of it, coming back in, but learning something new. And just to hopefully, like, I know that knowing that won't always make going through that any easier. I know that when we're in that moment, it can just be really hard. But hopefully this video will help soften that moment, so that you can get through it a little easier and with a lot more compassion. So on that, I'm wishing you lots of love and lots of laughter as always, and I'll see you next video. Thanks so much for watching.